Emily Rath is an international best-selling author of fantasy and romance. She's born in Florida and raised in Kentucky. She's a former university professor holding PhDs in political science and peace studies. Her work includes the TikTok sensation and an Amazon charts best-selling Jacksonville Rays Hockey Romance Series, as well as the Second Son's Regency Romance Series. She currently lives in Jacksonville with her husband, son, and cat, where they regularly comb the local beaches looking for shark teeth. And Emily will be joined in conversation with another local author, Jessica Hatch. Woo, give it up for Jessica. Oh, yes. Jessica has a passion for writing genre-blind, character-first fiction with a love of words and a strong beating heart. Her work has appeared in such publications as Writer's Digest, The Millions, Fast Company, Neutral Spaces, and Shirley Magazine, and she also hosts the virtual reading series Comp Title Book Club. Her freshman and sophomore novels were published by Hachette UK's Bookouture imprint, and her debut novel, My Big Fake Wedding, a Lonely Victories book of 2022, appeared in the top 50 women's fiction and top 100 romantic comedy titles on Amazon. Before becoming an author, Jessica worked and interned in New York trade publishing institutions, Writers House, and St. Martin's Press, and she also lives here in Jacksonville, Florida. So, Jessica, I will leave the rest to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for being here. It's such a good-looking crowd. Zoom, I see you in your pajamas. You look great. Emily, thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
Let's just dive in.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
I'm ready.
All right, cool. I first off just have to kick it off with this. Obviously, hockey romance. Have you always been a big hockey fan? And if not, like, what made you pick this as the sport for your sports romance?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I was like a diehard hockey fan of like following stats or having a favorite team or anything. I had been like tangentially interested. Most of my family lives up in the north of the US, so I had like cousins that were really active in it. They lived up in upstate New York. A lot of my family's in Minnesota, and so it was like I was kind of familiar. My mom's best friend, all three of her sons play professionally, so it was like it was always kind of there of like hockey culture, or you know, we would go to occasional hockey games. I would say my interest in it as from the author perspective was that I love hockey romances. So it was more of that reader perspective. I love hockey romance. I think it's such a fun genre. I love that the authors, we kind of like, we don't take ourselves too seriously, you know? So those of you that also love other hockey romances, like, it's just fun and it's funny and it's punny and it's, you know, fast paced. So
the title.
Yeah, punny, right? Yeah, punny. It's like, tell me you don't read hockey romance. Like, I know you don't read hockey romance if you hate the title, because it's like what hockey romance doesn't use like punny titles, you know? It's like we just don't take ourselves seriously. So yeah, it was really kind of the love of hockey romance that pulled me in. Of like, I think it's kind of the fantasy brain that I have. Like, as an author that writes fantasy, I was really drawn to the idea of, with hockey romances, the idea of interconnected standalones, as opposed to so often in fantasies, it's like one set of characters that you continue for 7 books. I loved the challenge and the fun of doing different things each time, but in the same universe. So you feel like you're building this massive fantasy scape, 30 plus characters, all this intricacy, but then you get to try the different tropes in each book, you know? So yeah. I was really drawn to that, of like the challenge of creating a world like that.
I love that. I love the interconnectedness. That's such a fun challenge, and I never would have considered that. Yeah. I don't come from a hockey background at all, but I really loved that. Even for that being the case, it didn't hold me back from enjoying the book. I think you do this remarkable job of having obviously character-driven scenes. It is a romance. It is a spicy romance. But then also having these hockey scenes where I might not fully get the terminology, but I'm there. I'm invested. I'm on the edge of my seat to see what's going to happen. Is Ilmari going to block this goal? Like, so just fantastic. I think that's a real strong suit of yours. And did writing the hockey romance to not have the hockey overpower the romance come from reading the genre, or just...
Yeah, you know, when you read as widely in the genre as I have, there's like the good and the bad and the ugly, like with anything, you know. So it's like when it comes to hockey romances, there's authors that will refer to dribbling the puck, and you're like, ooh, ouch, that's a hard one, you know. Or there's authors that it's like you'll finish the hockey romance and you'll be like, what sport did he play? You know, because it's like it never comes up, and so it's about finding that balance of like, I want, and especially with this book, like even Pucking Wild, people were like, there wasn't much hockey in it. And it's like, he's injured. So it's kind of like the nature of what's happening with the characters as well. So this one is you have 4 professionals that have to go to every hockey game. 2 of them are in it and 2 of them are on the sidelines of every game. So it's like to not have hockey in the book is like, then what are we doing? Like it's their life. And so this one is hockey heavy. Pucking Wild isn't, by nature of the fact that Ryan is injured for most of the book. So there's kind of that give and take there as well. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this is just like fun fact for the like my interest in hockey. Yeah. As I was writing the book, my mom was like, you know, my grandpa played in the NHL. And I was like, what? And so it's like my great grandpa, my mom's dad's dad, he played in the NHL. He played for Chicago. He played for Boston. He also played for like the AHL in the 30s. So like in the 30s and in through World War II, there's like all these pictures that she found. It was really cool. So
that is really,
yeah, there was that. And then for the equipment manager side, my great uncle has a patent for a blade sharpening machine. So like an ice skate sharpening machine.
And there's that scene, it's kind of an homage. Caleb is sharpening
the blades, and it's like it's in my blood somewhere.
You know? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So you come by it honest.
I come by it honestly. Yes, there is some hockey somewhere in the ether around me. Yeah.
That is so cool. Yeah. Very cool. Okay. So talked about sports, and now this is possibly a controversial question because I feel like a lot of people are going to have a lot of different opinions, but who is your favorite of the main characters in Pucking Around? You know, it is a linked series, but primarily I'm going to talk about that. Which is your favorite one of the main characters to write?
Yeah, I've mentioned this many times. Some of you might already know my answer because it's never changed. Do you know my answer? Anyone in the crowd? My favorite is also my least favorite. It's Jake. Okay. It's Jake. So Jake is my favorite and he's my least favorite. And the reason for that is because Jake has central to him as a character, he has ADHD and he has anxiety. And so when it's clicking, when I can like pull him to the front and have his voice there. So like last night, if any of you saw my Instagram stories last night, I've saved it in my story highlights. I was Jake last night. I was Jake for several hours and I was answering questions that readers were sending in to him. So it's like when he's there, he is so much fun to write. And it's like, it's as easy as breathing. He's so fun. But I have to be ready to give the energy that he gives. I have to be ready to have that voice. And so like his chapters are the longest chapters because it's just stream of consciousness. He's just thinking and feeling everything. It's very quick, right? So you're supposed to be reading him and have it feel fast paced. So it's like me, I don't have ADHD. I don't have anxiety that I know of. That maybe I do. I don't have Jake's version. And so when I'm not feeling him, there's just that block, you know, like some days I'm just like, I can't be you, you know? And so even like in the drafting process, if I knew his chapter was next, it would just be like, this isn't happening today because I can't be Jake today.
A big fat to come.
Yes, to come. Yeah, so it's like we're just gonna have to hold on because I can't be you. So he's the most fun, but he's also the most difficult. So
does he bring him out with that anxiety and that ADHD? Does that drain you? Is there another character you have to like get into a fun headspace, shake it off after? The
easiest transition is Jake and Rachel, the play that they have with each other. And then Caleb is the most natural for me to sink into, of just kind of more jaded, like a little more sarcastic, dry humor. Like he's real easy to get inside of. Jake is the toughest of like just having to be ready for that energy level. Absolutely. So like even like with Pucking Ever After Volume 2, I did a Rachel chapter so that I could have the energy, like almost like in a car, like, you know, so it's like, I'm at Rachel and then it's like, let's go. And then it's like, now I'm Jake. And then I could draft Jake's chapter.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've mentioned Rachel, Jake, Caleb, and Ilmari is the fourth.
Yes.
Pucking Around is written in those four people's first-person perspectives.
Yeah.
And we've talked a little bit about this just in, switching into hyperdrive with Jake and then downshifting into Rachel or whatever. Yeah. But because of this and because of its nature, the book's nature as a wide choose romance, there are four total I, me voices, first-person perspectives. So you've answered this with two of the characters, but how do you go about differentiating the tone of each character, finding the voices to make them feel distinct?
Yeah, it's the biggest challenge, I think, of that really has to come in kind of like the drafting process. I think one of the things that I started doing when I started writing Why Chooses, it was like a little thing that I did to hook on with the guys especially. My favorite Why Chooses are ones where all the men also have POV chapters. So you can read some Why Chooses where it's only the woman's POV. You never are inside the guys' heads, and I didn't really like that. It felt like the men just become a vehicle for her getting to tell her story, and they lose all agency. And in that way, they also feel very two-dimensional. So it'll just be like, I'm the one with blue eyes and a bad attitude, and it's like that's kind of all you get. And so knowing that I wanted to give them their own POVs and I wanted them to have a full sense of arc. They exist, so all three of the guys, they have things that are happening to them that exist outside of Rachel. And so it's like, who are you? Even if Rachel wasn't in the room, who are you? And trying to figure out and get inside their heads. One little trick that I have found, and some of my readers love it, and some of my readers like, why does she do this? I give it started with just the guys. Now it's all my characters. I assign them a zodiac sign, right? And so a lot of you know this. And so in this series, I'm playing it up a little more. But even in my Regency books, they all have a zodiac sign in my head. I know. And it's just it's like one little thing, like whether you like zodiac or not, it's just one little thing that kind of helps me hook into, okay, so what are the character traits of a Leo typically? I'm not trying to make them a caricature of that zodiac type, but my guys always have a different one, and that helps them feel different. You know what I mean? Like, I'm never going to write a Why Choose with 3 Leos. Right. Like, they have to be something separate, and then that helps me find a very different voice for the character, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And I can also see scrolling through Instagram, looking at the tag yourself, your zodiac sign, and you're like, okay, so Caleb is this guy, this version of Keanu Reeves having a snack, Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. I think that all of the guys bring something to the table. You mentioned Caleb, and I think he's such a fun, Luke Danes sort of character. Yeah. But you mentioned
I never made that connection until just now.
The first time that he came onto the page in his Jeep with I think he was even wearing a ball cap. Yeah. And his dog, I was like, this is big Luke Danes energy. Yeah.
You found me out. I watch a lot of Gilmore Girls.
Hey, man. My zodiac sign is Paris. That's anyway. But you mentioned also just your hockey lineage is what we'll call it. Yeah. And similarly to you, Ilmari Kinnunen, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly.
I say it Kinnunen. Yeah. I get heat sometimes from Finnish people. Okay. It's my family name. I say it the way my grandmother says it. She says it Kinnunen. Yeah.
Kinnunen.
So Kinnunen.
Okay. Yeah. That leads into the answer to my question. I was going to say, do you have Finnish ancestry? Yes. Because, there's a lot of understanding of where he's coming from, terms of endearment he uses with Rachel and teaches to Rachel. Yeah. So I wondered where that comes from. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I have Finnish on both sides of the family. So my mom's side of the family and my dad's side of the family. My dad's mother is first generation Finnish American. She grew up speaking Finn in the home, and she was the one that really fostered in me the most a love of our Finnish culture. She would, she gave me a Finnish phrase book. She would, make Finnish breads for me, like pula bread and, different snacks and food. And she was the one that was she'd go over to Finland. She did several trips later in life. She did several trips back to Finland and met with cousins. And she, so she'd bring back, folk art pieces or, handmade knives or, just whatever that it's like, this is who we are and this is part of us. And so she really inspired me. And actually, across all of my books, I've been trying to kind of Easter egg this idea of the universe, right? The Emily verse. And so some of you that like maybe have read the Regency books, you saw the nods that I've done in the hockey books to that series. There's Whiskey and Sin references in here. There's Regency references in Whiskey and Sin, right? So I'm kind of weaving it all together. And so Ilmari as a character and his back tattoo is weaving in kind of like the next stage of the Emily verse is going to be my trad adult fantasy debut. And so that is a Finnish mythology retelling. And so Ilmari's name is a shortened form of Ilmarinen, and he's kind of like the Hephaestus of Finnish mythology.
Which that is the Greek god of the forges, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And so his name is a nod to Finnish mythology, and then his back tattoo is scenes from the Kalevala. So he has scene of the death god, he has a scene of Vainamoinen, you know. So all of these different pieces of Finnish mythology that he carries. And so then he's kind of the connecting point that, for those of you that are interested in this kind of thing, the fantasy will come out in 2025, and so that will be that'll be January, and so then it connects through, right? So he's kind of like our thread of like, let's go this way.
That's so dang cool.
Yeah. So yeah,
very nice. Okay, this is, if I may say so, a very sexy book. And a long one too, which does not disappoint any readers who are looking for multiple spicy scenes.
Yeah.
So without getting to NSFLC, which stands for Not Suitable for Lit Chat, Emily, do you have a brainstorming process that allows you to write so creatively without, shall we say, repeating earlier scenes?
Yeah. Well, so it was the kind of thing of when this came out, it came out to a predominantly Why Choose audience. Those were the first people that read it. And so if you know Why Choose, you understand why it was the length that it was, right? It's like, it's not one romance. It's not a hockey romance. This is one book that is hockey romances. It's 4 different interconnected romances. So Why Choose readers were like, this could have been 2 times longer. Like, you gypped us. But then when all these hockey romance readers came in, they were like, this is the longest book I've ever read. Oh my God, why is this so long? You know, and this is so spicy, and there's all these scenes, but it's like, it's 4 romances. So the fact that you know that she is going to have a romance with these 3 different men, you're guaranteed 3 scenes right there, because you're going to have at least 3 scenes of that introductory, right? Of like, who are you in this capacity, right? I've learned who you are in work, and now I'll learn who you are in this other way. But I feel like with the kind of romance I'm trying to write, the spice can't just be spice. It has to do something. So all of my spice scenes, you know, it almost is kind of like a disservice of a lot of people that this is the first kind of book like this that they read. They're like, that's all they can focus on is like, this is the spiciest thing I've ever read, right? And it's like, I can grant you that. There's a lot of sex in this book, but it's all doing something. So the characters are revealing something about themselves. They're learning something about themselves. We're getting communication. We're getting, you know, so much gets revealed through the scenes that it's like, if all you're seeing is just the physical movement, you're missing so much, right? And that's the kind of character-driven plot that's in this book, is even through the spice scenes, the characters are actively growing, changing, learning new things about themselves, about each other, you know.
Absolutely. No, I love that answer. Making sure that, not that there's anything wrong with it, but not spice for spice's sake, but rather like...
And those books exist. And they're great.
And they're great, yeah. But like character development,
yeah.
and having, dare I say, like a choreography to these things that are being discovered. Yeah.
Yeah, but it definitely is. They're the hardest scenes to write, I think, just because there is so much that's happening. You not only have a physical choreography element, but you do have, like, so when I'm drafting it, that's kind of where you have to start, is like, who's in the room, what am I going to do, into that brainstorming of like, what's gonna be happening. And so the first time you do a write through, it's not all that spicy. It's the technical, it's like the arms and legs, and if it's like, he has 3 right arms, how did that happen, you know, things like that. So it's like, it's just like the technical of figuring out who's in the room, what are they doing, what's the pacing of this scene? And it's like, once I get that kind of done, then it's like, all right, now build in the fun, build in the dialogue, build in the exchange. And then once I get that in, it's like, okay, it's feeling a little bit better. And then, you know, because you're trying to think about all your senses. So then it's like, now let's build in the senses. And now it's like, let's take it from technical of like physical movement to the engagement of the dialogue to the energy and the feeling. And it's like, all right, so now let's make it spicy, right? It never starts that way. So the scenes take forever. They take forever. And if you think like in the first several rounds of writing them, like I'm not having a good time. Like I'm not, or it's like, I'm not like, this is hot. It takes a long time to build out because they are so, the scenes are so complicated because they have to do so much work on so many levels. So it's fun. By the end, once it's done, then I can be like, okay, yeah, that was fun. That was fun. Yeah. But yeah, in the process, it's like, oh, this is a slog.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hope you guys appreciate that you're getting a full-on masterclass from Emily Rath right now. This is amazing. So I mean, you talk about characters discovering things about themselves during these scenes. I'm not going to spoil anything for those who haven't read. Beyond saying this, your books, and I love this, are unapologetically queer friendly. And going beyond monogamous queerness, it's a why choose romance. So there are the complex dynamics of creating a thriving polycule.
Yeah.
And so do you feel, just like sort of off the cuff question, but do you feel that your characters have healthy poly relationships by the end of the novel? And like, how could they improve? How do they improve in future books, if you don't mind spoiling a little?
Yeah, I think the process is kind of like, the timeline of this book is really only about 4 months. That's not a long time, right? For them to go from 4 independent people to we are a closed polycule with the connections that we have within this group, you know? And so it really is kind of like, I think it matters that I'm doing the Pucking Ever After volumes that I'm doing because you're seeing growth and change. And I feel like that really matters, of this idea of embracing your queerness is not just like, I'm queer and now everything will just move forward and there won't be problems or there won't be anything to explore. There won't be any questions. There won't be anything to unpack, you know? So even Jake, like where Jake ends at the end of this, I'm not giving away too much of a spoiler, is like, he's very newly queer at the end of this. And I try and hint at the idea of like, he hasn't always made good choices. He hasn't always had a queer mindset for himself. It's kind of like, I'm straight until I'm not. And when I was straight, I behaved rather straight. And so he has these feelings and emotions that he pulls up of like, I've been homophobic in the past. I've been, you know, and that's part of hockey culture. That's part of, you know, and so him just being like, whoa, this is trippy. Yeah. Of like, who am I now? But the book kind of ends. And so I feel like it's important that we see in these kind of bonus little novellas that I've been doing of like what this growth and change can look like, how relationship dynamics change over time, how people and their own self journeys change over time. Awesome. Right. And I think that matters.
Absolutely. I have to say I have an ally sticker to I might be queer pipeline is so real.
Yeah. I was like, oh no, yeah. It's like my best friend comes out and it's like, I'm going to stop making gay jokes and I'm going to have the sticker on my water bottle and I'm going to, you know, threaten to punch people that make fun of my best friend. And then it's like, oh, now I'm married to my best friend. You know? It's like, like, how did that happen? Right? Yeah.
You might be wondering how I found myself here.
Yeah.
So great answer. This might be a tough one,
okay,
but what is, if you can pick your single favorite line you wrote in Pucking Around?
Yes. And
also what seems to be fans' favorite? In my defense, because this is a hard question, but I saw your little adorable stickers in an Instagram post and I was like, okay, she must have a favorite line. These stickers are amazing. Yeah,
no, I have a favorite line. The line that absolutely broke me of like, I wrote it down and I just sobbed. It's a Caleb line and it's Caleb to Jake. And it's when Caleb says, I know how to undress you. And it's this moment where Jake is nervous. Jake's hands are trembling as he's trying to get out of his own uniform. And he's there with his best friend. And the scene, that line carries so much weight of he's looking at this person of it's like, you're my equipment manager, so of course you know how to undress me. But also you've played hockey for 20 years and my dreams are coming true and yours aren't. And we're standing here. You know how to undress me because you've undressed yourself thousands of times. You played hockey too, and now I'm the only one that does. And so it's just like, oh my God, also, I just sobbed.
Also, dare I say, you were just talking about like male homophilic dynamics and homophobia in very masculine spaces, and just the like, men don't get to do this a lot, but just like, let me take care of you too, you know?
Yeah, like I can help. I know how to undress you. But it was just like, once I wrote that Jake's hands were trembling, because I have a very cinematic imagination too. So it's like, I see it like a movie in my head. So when Jake's hands started trembling, I was like, oh, F, here we go. And then I gave Caleb that line and it was like, sob. It was awful. Oh, I cried. I cried.
Like have a Camelback of water to hydrate so you can type.
Like somebody. I joke. I'm a huge Grey's Anatomy fan. Like seasons 1 through 3, I will live and die. And so the Christina Yang "Somebody Sedate Me," like that was me. Somebody sedate me. So I'm writing.
And then what seems to be like, when you see Amazon fan highlights and things like that, what do fans seem to love as their favorite line?
That's tough. I feel like there's a lot. I don't know.
What are any in the audience?
Favorite lines? There's so many. It starts too as like there's so many books, you know.
That's true too.
Or like
that's
so many.
True too.
I don't know. What's a favorite? Why choose? Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Or just oh my God, I kind of have pulled that one out. Or like or like in the Tess and Ryan, I love like that's not my middle name.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like wait, what? That's not my middle name. Like, I don't know your middle name.
I do love the oh God, I'm gonna botch it, but the koala when she's
it's a great hug you like a koala. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Sudden death. Yeah. Sudden death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I do feel like the Jacksonville Rays series is sort of undoing some national concepts of Jacksonville created by beloved things such as the good place. Like nature is healing maybe a little bit. Did you bake any of your favorite local spots into the book or create any fictional ones you wish existed? And also, does anyone think that this is an actual NHL team?
So I've gotten a wide range of people being like, I love that this is set in Jacksonville, to be like, why is this set in Jacksonville? Like people have made reviews on TikTok and tagged me in it of like that they don't want to read it because it's set in Jacksonville. And it's like, rude. You know, it's like, why am I in this room? Like untag me in this.
Don't tag authors in negative reviews.
Yeah, but it was a book they had not read.
Yeah, it's not.
It was saying they don't want to read it because it's set in Jacksonville, and I'm like, bizarre. Who hurt you? Like, what did what did? Yeah. Anyway, so it's the range. I definitely have had people that they're like, it ruined the magic for them that it was set in Jacksonville, and I'm like, okay, you know. And my whole thing has been like, it's a fantasy. Florida already has 2 NHL teams. The chance that we'd ever get another one, it's like it's fantasy. It's not real. So it's like, dream with me that it's set in Jacksonville. Like, let's just have a fun time.
Yeah.
But as far as things, I definitely have things that I weave in, even if it's not like specific restaurants or specific bars or something like that. It's just the vibe, you know. So things like being up by Atlantic Beach, where it's kind of more of like party and like outdoor music, and you can kind of walk right up from the beach and get a beer, you know. So like there's that kind of vibe. There's I do mention Mickler's Landing as a beach that they go to. So like Tess has an event at Mickler's Landing. That's my favorite beach. It's the one has been closest to my house. So there's little things like that, or like in my mind I think of sushi restaurants that I like, or Vietnamese restaurants, or you know, and I don't typically name them in the books. I think the only place I have specifically named that is real is Mickler's Landing. But otherwise it's just kind of vibes of like, are they up by Neptune? Are they down by Atlantic? And, you know, we all kind of, if you're from Jacksonville, you know the vibes of those different areas.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think the most Jacksonville coded thing in my second book was the traffic. And you mentioned the traffic as well.
Yeah. Coming over the intercoastal. Yeah. Stuff like that. So in Pucking's Suite, that'll be book 3. Poppy will have to throw an event in St. Augustine. So we're going to see a little bit of St. Augustine. So the idea of like sometimes the guys go down there and they hang out, and so we're going to get a St. Augustine scene in there, and that should be fun.
I think Poppy's like my favorite minor character, by the way. She's adorable.
Yeah.
So to pivot away from pucking around and just talk shop in general, I was just wondering who some of your inspirations, whether authors or other forms of media, are.
Yeah, I feel like that answer has changed so much since becoming an author myself, because now the lenses that I'm using are completely different. So it's not like I am a reader, yes, and so I think of authors that I love or authors that have inspired me, stories that have inspired me. But now that I am an author, I'm thinking so much more in terms of business as well. And so I have a whole separate list of authors that I'm like, man, she's crushing it. Like, even if I don't like her books, it's like, but you and your brand and the way you're thinking strategy, the way that you're marketing. So it's kind of, they're very different of like, whether it's I love you in terms of craft and the way you write story versus I really admire the way you are building a conscious brand. And so those are kind of very different camps.
And for any writers in the audience, like, that's super important to know your category inside and out the way Emily clearly does.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, just from like a craft perspective, like, and it's so hard too, because when you're reading all the time, I feel like the books where you just like lose yourself in them become fewer and farther between. But even if there's just like films that inspire you, or you mentioned Grey's Anatomy. So
yeah, films. Yeah, I am so, my brain is just kind of back to the point of like, I say Jake has ADHD and anxiety and I don't. And I'm like questioning things, of like, I can't, it gets harder and harder to turn my brain off. And so when I'm in drafting mode, I can't start new media, if that makes sense. So people that are like, oh, there's a new movie I want to watch. It's like, no, the new movie's in my head. I'm drafting it right now. So I have to fall back on kind of like comfort reads, comfort watches. So that's where it's like, I will watch Grey's Anatomy for the 100th time, or Gilmore Girls, or, depending on my mood, I have some that are like heavier dramas, more of like rom-com, it's like, what am I in the mood for? But it has to feel, it can't be new. Right. It's almost more of like, I need the comfort.
There's also sort of that danger. I don't know if this happens to you, but like if I'm drafting and I start reading a particular type of book a lot, there's the risk that I'm going to start writing like that author, or and if it's comfort, then like you sort of already know the beats. So
and so I often will do like whatever I'm drafting in, I read whatever feels kind of like the furthest away from that thing. So like when I was doing my Regency series, I read so much orc romance and like Ice Planet Barbarians, because it just was different, it's like, I'm not in a Regency drawing room, I'm on in the Ice Planet, not Hoth, and so it's just a very different feeling. And so with the hockey romances, that was tough. I had all of these friends, like other author friends that were publishing their books, and I was just like, I can't. Like, I feel bad, but it's like, I can't read your book because I'm drafting my own hockey romance. It's like, I can't do it. I'm already in that headspace. I got to do something else.
I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Also, stealing the line, the new movie is in my head. I love that so much. That's my new favorite Emily Rath line.
The new movie's in my head. It's like, I'm already watching it all the time because my cinematic imagination, it literally is, it's like a movie that's playing in my brain.
Yes.
All the time until I get it out.
And you can tell when you read these books, like you feel like it's up on a big screen, I feel like. So you mentioned when you were talking about, we were talking about spiciness, and you were like, okay, well, people who love and read Why Choose Romances, they're like, hey, this is short, what the heck? And then people who read hockey romance were like, whoa, this is a doorstop and so spicy. Why is it so spicy? So what do you think, because that's two different audiences, right? So what was the secret sauce that made this just like take TikTok by storm? Or are you the secret sauce?
It very much was, as much as you want to feel like as an author, you do have to put in the work and you have to have the book that can sell. But so much of this game is down to chance. It really is. And you have to understand where luck comes into play. You have to understand where chance comes into play. And so for me, it was this perfect storm of, I published this in March. There was March of last year. There had been a couple. We were getting some palette teasers. Grace McGinty did a Why Choose Hockey Romance. Sarah Blue did a Why Choose Omegaverse Hockey Romance, right? So it's like, Why Choose is its own huge genre with very rabid readers.
Yes.
Hockey Romance is its own huge genre, very rabid readers. And there wasn't much there. And so I was really able to ride a wave of, there was only like 3 books that had big enough titles that were particularly on TikTok, that both hockey romance readers and Wide Shoes readers were talking about. And so I was like, the door is open for, and it's rare that you can get that, to have two completely different markets both be willing to try a thing. And so it's like for Wide Shoes is dominated, many of you probably know this, Wide Shoes is dominated by like mafia romance, paranormal romance, motorcycle romance, anything, because the whole point with Wide Shoes is you have to have forced proximity. You have to have a reason, right, why one woman would be surrounded by three men all of the time, or three plus. Right. And so sport is perfect, but it's been underutilized, right? And so there wasn't, the market is growing for it. And so I was just lucky. I came in at the right time. The NHL was going into a huge boom movement on TikTok. They were going into the playoffs for the Stanley Cup. So it all just was like swirling. Perfect. Right? Swirling. So you have to, like, I did my best to write a book that I thought people would enjoy, and it happened to hit at the right moment. Yeah. Great timing.
Because, I mean, this isn't your first book. You've written, how many books are in the Regency series?
The Regency has 3, and then there's Whiskey and Sin is number 4. So then That One Night was the little novella that I did, then this one. But I had already, for the trad market, I had already written 2 books and was on submission with one of those for a year. I shelved that. I wrote another book, The Finnish Fantasy is the 3rd book I've ever written. It'll be like the 13th book I publish. That's with the way that the markets are just so different. So yeah, that was kind of funny with this, that people would be like, this is her debut book. And I was like, it's not. No. Like, it's not my debut book. So yeah, it's kind of funny.
What do they call it in the industry? A breakout. It's
your
breakout book.
It's my breakout. Yeah. It's not my debut.
Yeah. But I mean, that just speaks to the persistence you have to have. Yeah. You have to be creative. You have to be brilliant, but then you also just have to keep at it and wait for that. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Good for you. Like, that's truly, I mean that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, you spoke a little bit about like this, you surfed into that moment, and did you then, when you saw your moment, when you saw that perfect wave, to use the surfing metaphor, did you have a strategy that you used to market your books, and did it change by the end?
Yes, very much it did. So there was a lot that happened. There was a lot that I got kind of pulled into that was very unexpected. As not only was there this book that was wildly successful, but there was also Icebreaker that was wildly successful, and they are completely different. Like, people that try to compare this book and Icebreaker, it's like apples and Tonka truck. Like, they're like they happen to both be hockey romances, and that's kind of where it stops. Right? Because like, that's college, it's MF, it's just a completely different world. Yeah. But anyway, so that was also getting really popular. I did a lot of engagement with doing like duets and stitches on TikTok. I was really playing up the marketing idea of like the rule of 7, of like, they have to see it 7 times before they're going to remember it, before they're going to buy it. And so in the peak of me pushing this, and this was just me, I was a one-person machine. I was posting to TikTok 7 to 10 times a day. But it got to the point where I had readers being like, you're all over my FYP. And they're like, that's a good thing. Like, that I had reached it. I had achieved it. Yeah. And TikTok is the kind of monster that it works off of the same algorithms as slot machines, right? As gambling. The more time you spend on the app, the more it rewards you. And so the fact that I was spending so much of my life on the app and posting 7 to 10 times a day, I was getting talks that were going 1 million views, viral, 500,000 views, viral, and it was a really kind of special moment that several authors had that in different genres over the summer. The algorithm, because it's constantly changing, it's like gone. Balloon has popped. Yep. It's not the same app anymore. Yep. And so to try and recreate it or think like, oh, the next release will be just as big. No, because TikTok's changed its game, No. So it's like, this happened when it happened. It helped me break out. And now the struggle is all over again of I'm back to like trying to eke out, like, I'll get maybe 2,000 views on a talk when I have 65,000 followers, it's like only 2,000 views.
The beautiful thing though is that now you have all of those people who found you for future books. So.
Yeah. And across the different apps and things like that. But yeah, it's you're constantly having to learn and constantly having to reinvent or relearn an app you thought you understood because it changes and you're like,
never ending. Yeah.
Now I'm starting all over.
Well, thank you so much for chatting and answering my questions. I think we're pivoting to audience questions now.
Yes.
I love it when they notice me creep up to change gears. So we are going to open it up for audience questions. So for those of you in person, if you have any, please do write them down on your note card. And we do have volunteers at the sides to collect them. So just hold them up if you have, and they'll come and get you. And for our Zoom audience, please submit them through the Q&A chat box, and we'll have someone write them down and get them all up here. So I see my volunteers gathering them, so I will go and grab them to hand over to Jessica.
And you guys, I'm going to do my darndest to get through as many as we can in 20 minutes, but Emily is so...
I'll try and keep my answers short.
And Emily is so sweet. So, if you want to go up to her in the signing line and ask your question there, if we don't get to it, you will have maybe a chance. So let's see. Okay, let's start with this one.
Okay.
Can you tell us how the Emilyverse started and evolved? What were some big turning points in your success?
Yes. So the Emilyverse was born out of an absolute existential crisis that I had at a bar in Vegas. Because I was there at a book conference called 20 Books to 50K. So it's basically like a indie author event of like, how can you write enough books so that, within you writing 20 books, you should be making 50K a month, right? Is the idea of like, how can you do this? How can you, monetize in this way? So I was at this event and Melanie Harlow was there. Any Melanie Harlow fans, right? And so, yeah, Melanie Harlow. Melanie Harlow changed my life. And it was that she gave advice that I decided I have to do the opposite of her advice or die. And so Melanie's amazing. I've read her entire backlist, love Melanie Harlow, but she has cornered her niche, right? She knows what she writes. She writes small town, MF, typically grumpy sunshine. She has quirky sisters. He plays a sport on the side. It's like she knows what her readers want. And so she does it over and over and over, and she makes 7 figures. And so her whole talk was, don't serve them spaghetti when you've promised them cake. And so her whole idea is like, for me, the Emilyverse is like, I'm going to serve you a buffet. Yeah. It's not cake. Like, she serves cake. That's all she serves. And her readers know exactly what they're going to get. They love it. They eat it up every time. She serves me cake. Right. And so I felt like if I have to write small town, boy meets girl, he's a grump, she's a sunshine with quirky sisters, and maybe there's a dog, over and over and over and over again, I will die. Like, the creativity in me will just die. Yeah. And so for Melanie, it works. And it's amazing. And she's made a career out of it. Or someone like Elsie Silver, same kind, exactly following Melanie's footsteps, 7-figure USA Today, Sunday Times bestselling author. It can work. I do not have that brain. Right. And so I was having a crisis at the bar with my friend that was at this event with me. And she was like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I have to just go. I have to write the books that I want to write. And I have to hope that the readers will just love my voice enough that they'll follow me, whether it's an Omegaverse or a Regency romance or a hockey romance. And so we built out the Emilyverse. And so it's this idea of like, wherever we go, forward or backward in time, fantasy or contemporary, get in the car, we're going,
Amazing.
And that's what we built. And then she actually, even the little Y, at first it was, it's the cancer sign flipped. So, because it's like, I'm a Cancer. And so the Y is a flipped cancer sign. And that was her idea of like, wouldn't that be cute? Change out the Y in your name to a cancer sign. And so it was born at that bar, and it was like, oh, I can breathe again. So yeah, Melanie Harlow, you changed my life. And I took your opposite advice. But you changed my life. Yeah.
There you go. Since you are such a lover of hockey romance, what are some of your favorites or recommendations?
Right now I am reading, oh my gosh, it's so much fun. I'm smiling. I literally finished one this morning. What is it called? The Puck Boy series by Ian Finley and Saxon James. So I read it's so cute. So it's hockey romances. They're just delicious. They're so sweet and fun. I know S.J. Tilly just announced the 4th book in her Sleet series. I think the Sleet series is fun. The number 3 is my favorite, Sleet Banshee. I live for Megan Ash. You've got some like old standbys like Helena Hunting. One of my best friends, Jessa Wilder, has been doing some hockey romances as well, like college hockey romance. There's so many. My gosh, I could sit here forever. Like, it's such a absolutely huge genre at this point. Yeah. There's a lot. You can ask me for more recs off this.
And a sort of follow-up about your own hockey romances. Any news on Merry Pucking Christmas, which you had teased?
Yeah, so there will be news about that. There was a lot that happened, right? I was writing that in December, and it was very on board to publish that in December. A lot happened. Some of you that have been following me know what happened. I had a beautiful, perfect window of about 2 weeks that I could have turned that around for you all. And then I ended up having to go out of town to visit my grandmother, who is, in end of life care. And then honestly, readers sent me in one single day. I had multiple readers send me a hour-long, incredibly critical review of my book. And they're like, I think you need to see this. Have you seen this? Did you know that this was here? And it absolutely tanked my mental health. Because I was sitting there with my dying grandmother looking at an hour-long, ragingly critiquing video. And it had more views than the Super Bowl by 3, Jeez. And so I'm just sitting there in this end-of-life care unit being like, there's 3 football stadiums worth of people hating me right now, and so it was really hard. And so it was a moment for me that the joy was gone, frankly, to write that Merry Pucking Christmas scene. The joy was gone, and I couldn't. It's still open on my laptop. The Word document is open on my laptop, and I haven't touched it since December. It really hit my mental health. So I would love to finish it for y'all, but I had that window to do it, and it closed in February. I had to do edits for the fantasy book, and now I have to work on Poppy's book, or the publishers will be like, "Squeeze me," keep going, So I want to get to Merry Pucking Christmas. The window that I had for it closed. And we're going to see when I can get it done, because I have to do these contracted books.
Absolutely. I'm so sorry about that. I had very little idea of what had happened. Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked such a...
No, I think it's important, because when authors tell you, don't tag us in critical reviews, that's what we mean. Is like
you're a person on the other end of the screen.
Yeah. When authors are in a place to accept that, we will accept it, and we'll go looking for it.
And to be very clear, not saying don't write that 1-star review. That's your free speech. Absolutely, but you don't necessarily need to tag
shove it in my face when I'm at hospice care with my grandmother. So that was really tough.
Okay. I feel like I owe you a compliment right now, so I'll do that. Does anyone ever tell you look like a mix between Adele and Meghan Trainor?
No, I get Kelly Clarkson a lot.
Okay.
And about 60 pounds ago, I got Carrie Underwood a lot. Okay. I really did look a lot like Carrie Underwood in college. Like, I went to an event once, and a woman screamed. She was like, "Oh my God, it's Carrie Underwood!" I was like,
you could have made a real career out of that for a while. I'm her body double. Let's see. We've got so many great questions, you guys.
I'll go faster.
Okay. Since you are watching the movie in your head when you're writing, do you cast the characters, or do you see them as you imagine them in your head?
So I try and be very careful about this. I really, really don't like, because I'm such a pop culture nerd, I do not like fan casting my own characters, particularly as a famous person. Yeah. So, because at this point, I can't watch Brad Pitt in anything. Because he's just Brad Pitt. You know what I mean? It's he's not, whatever character he's doing, lovely. Well done, Brad. I couldn't even tell you the name of the character he's playing. He's just Brad.
Right.
And I'm thinking about his alcoholism and his kids that don't talk to him. And you know what I mean? Because it's it's all in my head. So I can't be a lot of people were like, Ilmari is Chris Hemsworth, And I'm just like, don't tell me that, because I don't want to see that. Right. Because then that's all I'll see.
Right.
And so I tend to go the route of Pinterest or something like that, and find, if anything, just images. But if I know who the person is, they're not my character. And so it's people that are unknowns to me.
That makes sense.
And then I can connect with them in that way. So I voraciously make mood boards and stuff, but I'm not fan casting Nina Dobrev. No, I don't do that.
No. We were talking about this a bit before we got started.
Yeah.
Emily, how do you schedule writing into your day?
I don't.
She's busy, guys.
No, it's incredibly difficult. I should shout out, someone very special is here tonight. I know this is Galentine's Day, but Mr. Emily Rath is at his very first Emily Rath Books event. And so it's the challenge of not only am I married to Mr. Emily Rath, but we also have a kid and a life, and like right now we're trying to close on a house, and we're living in an apartment, and there's a kayak in my kitchen, and there's it's just like it's chaos.
Yeah.
And so when I was full-time jobbing it, when I was a professor, I found that the only time I had in my life would be after my kid went to sleep at night. So I would work a 9-to-5 job, and then I would write from like 8 p.m. till 1, 2 in the morning. And I was doing that, or doing, whether it was writing or just doing the author admin stuff. And now it's such a habit, and it feels so comfortable that that's what I prefer, is I write. I like the dark and the quiet.
It's quiet.
And my kid is asleep. And, my husband is entertaining himself somewhere in the house, and it's just like, it's just dark and it's quiet, and I can think. That's my best time to write, is like 9 to midnight is a sweet spot.
Nice.
When I write.
Very nice.
Mornings are out. I'm not a morning person at all.
I'm attempting it right now. It's going just okay.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So I feel you. Jake can tell what people's favorite ice cream is. Can you? Is that a hidden talent?
I wouldn't say it's a hidden talent of mine. I love ice cream, and I have sampled a lot of ice cream in my life. But no, I wouldn't say it's a talent of mine. And people ask all the time about the ice cream flavors of which one is my favorite. I've joked about this, I think, before we started. Yeah. Jake is like the opposite of me in so many ways, but I have also put so much of myself into him. So his favorite ice cream flavor is my favorite. So I gave him chocolate peanut butter. His favorite movies are my favorite movies. His favorite foods, like all, so it's like he is me, even while he is nothing like me,
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that so much. Oh my gosh. Let's see. This is a good sort of educational question, and if it's one we just kind of explore up here together, that's cool. What to you is the difference between queer and fluid? And honestly, queer is such an umbrella term for, it can mean that you have different sexual orientation, different gender orientation. Like I'm not entirely.
I guess off the top of my head, I tend to prefer the big thing that's been part of my queer journey is that I hate labels. I don't really love any of the labels, and it was really hard for me at first to be like, I'm bi, but then bi didn't felt like it fit, and it's like, I'm pan didn't also feel like it fit, and then it's like queer has been the thing I've sat most comfortably in as I've moved through this process. And so I tend to kind of just give that label broadly to my universe, even though I do have characters within it that they identify as bi, or they identify as gay, or, just queer writ large. I guess I would see it, even if you think of someone like a Jake character, of not only does he have an element of queerness to him, but I would think the fluidity would come of, even like take his relationship, if we're going further down the canon, if you take his relationship with Ilmari, of like there's a fluidity to his sexuality and his identity of like when the four of them are together, Jake's up for anything, including being amorous with Ilmari. But there's that fluidity sense of, if it's just the two of them alone in the house, it'll be like, hey, like there'd be no sense of like, take me, sailor, like that's so there's that fluidity of like, he's queer and he's fluid in when he wants to be with the people within his polycule and how he wants it to be. And I guess that's my answer.
Cool. Thank you for being up for that question. Speaking of Ilmari, was there a real person who inspired his more insightful speeches? He has a lot of like gorgeous Finnish wisdom just to like distribute on everyone.
I just loved the idea of like the kind of like the strong silent type, or it's just like I love that trope of the character that it's like they don't say anything until they say something, and like what they say matters, and so like even in Pucking Wild, one of my favorite lines from Pucking Wild is that like Tess is spiraling, she's looking for advice from anyone who will give it, and he's the one that gives it, and his advice is life is short.
There you go.
And so, you know, and so she's sitting there spinning herself out, and there's paragraphs of her thinking through what advice she wishes someone would give her, and he gives her 3 words, and it's like, that's exactly what I needed to hear. All right, I'm good. Yep. Life is short, you know?
Yeah.
And so
your characters are so real too, because for being so stoic and everything, he still has those quirks of like, oh, well, you have to sit next to me on the plane because if you don't, we're gonna lose now.
Yeah,
you know?
superstitions.
He feels
and,
3-dimensional. You know?
Yeah.
Whereas I think in lesser hands, he could just be a stereotype of the strong,
silent type. Yeah.
Have you ever been to an Iceman's game? And
yes.
this person says there should be a ladies' night at a game where you drop the puck.
Yes, I have met the queen of the Icemen, the girlfriend for the team, the coach. So I have brought readers to a game before. I'm actually going. There's a book club that they do sports romances, and they have invited me to go. So the first week of March, we're going to be going. And they bought me a ticket. It was real sweet of them. So yeah, I love going to the Iceman games. I'm partial to the Lizard King branding. I think it's way cooler, especially like the retro kind of like Ninja Turtles 90s vibe they're doing right now is like chef's kiss. So I have several Lizard King shirts, but then I do go to the Iceman games.
Very cool. I'm cold natured, so I have to like
bundle up
when I go.
Yeah.
You mentioned mood boards. Do you do playlists when you write? I can't listen to any words when I write.
I can't listen to them when I write, but I listen to them obsessively. Yep. When I'm not writing. Yeah. So like even on the way over here, I have it's Pucking Sweet time. So it's like I am only listening to the Pucking Sweet playlist. The backdrop of my the desktop on my screen is the mood board. It's just like
you're all immersing
all the time. Yeah. Even though I need the quiet while I'm actually writing.
Same. All right. We've got time for maybe 2 more. Here's a good one, because you mentioned, like your Finnish fantasy is going to be your 13th novel by the time it comes out.
Somewhere around there.
So prolific. How do you know which ideas will make for a good book rather than the ones where you're like, maybe that's on the back burner for a while? Yeah, I have plenty that I've started and stopped in the past. There's ones that I know I'll get back to. It's just the moment wasn't right when I was trying to do it. So like I have one, I'm obsessed and I can't wait to do it. One of my absolute all-time favorite pieces of media ever created was The Mummy. And so I am going to have my version of The Mummy, right? Why choose The Mummy? And like I've written about like 40,000 words of it, and I have mood boards, I have Spotify, I have like it's just here like tell me more. Oh my god, it's gonna be amazing. Oh my god, it's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be amazing. That was my an entire generation's bisexual awakening. Absolutely. And so it's like, I know the market is there. Amazing. The market is there for a Why Choose the Mummy. Like, you cannot tell me there isn't one. So that is coming for sure. But I've written about 40,000 words. It just wasn't the right, it wasn't the right moment. Right. So I've got ideas like that. There have been other things there's a dream book that I want to do. And again, it's like, I know the nugget is there. It's just about timing. And an ethos for me is like, follow the joy. Like I have to write what's bringing me joy. So like even with the Regency series, Whiskey and Sin happened because I was contracted for a 3rd Regency book and I could not write it. I was done, It was too much Regency. I needed a palate cleanser. Yeah. And so I wrote that. I had a draft of that done in 2 weeks because my heart was just like, tell a different story. And so I just let it happen. And then once it came out, it was like, now I feel energized, and I went back and wrote that 3rd Regency book. That's so fantastic. The order of those books was like Whiskey and Sin was just like, I need something different, you know? It's been tough because I'm feeling it very much. I want to write this paranormal thing before Pucking Sweet, but now I'm contracted. So it's like, I've been up against it for this past month of like it feels like holding in a sneeze or something, just like, I want to write something else.
but yeah, I'm powering through.
Such a great analogy for the intersection of art and business and writing.
Yeah.
Just holding in a sneeze.
I'm just holding in a sneeze perpetually.
Well, I think that readers can really tell when an author is having such a good time, a joyous time writing. And I think it's very clear that everyone in this room really enjoys your writing because of that.
I have not laughed so much. And that was something that was so fun. This made me just laugh so much writing it. And like one of my favorite things that I'll hear from people is like women that will tell me that their husbands have read it because the husbands were like, what has you laughing? Like there's no way that book is that funny. And she's like, try it. And it'd be like, my husband read it and he was laughing, you know, so that's just amazing. It's like, just the joy, right? The joy is so much fun. Awesome. So yeah, following the joy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing joy to us all here today.
Yes. Thank you so much.